and welcome to this Astranti YouTube video. This is the follow-up to the video that I posted a couple of weeks ago where I looked at the advantages and the reasons for acquisitions. In this video, we're going to look at the disadvantages and what can go wrong during an acquisition. If you like this video and you want to see more of them, then please like and subscribe at the bottom of the screen or visit the Astranti website www.astranti.com for more information and more samples. So whilst this is called the disadvantages of acquisitions, it's more looking at what can go wrong in an acquisition. There are quite a few things that can go wrong, and the 5 that we're going to look at in this video are overpaying, integration issues, management ability, change management, and due diligence. So let's take a look at each of these individually, starting with overpaying. Now, overpaying is, as the name would suggest, where you pay too much for the organization. It's very common for the company that is doing the acquiring to pay a premium because they want to ensure that the shareholders sell, etc. And they'll try and justify this by saying that it's worth paying and we see that there's growth and there's potential and there's going to be synergy that's created, etc. But if that doesn't happen, then what happens is you end up in a situation where you've overpaid. And the example I've got here is with the bank RBS. Now, RBS paid £49 billion for a Dutch bank called ABN AMRO. And they thought that this was going to be a brilliant purchase, etc., and it was going to lead to synergy and all this sort of thing, but it was an absolute disaster. And a few years later, RBS announced that they had losses of £28 billion. And they actually said that 20 billion of this 28 billion loss was down to the failed acquisition of ABN AMRO. So the company actually lost £20 billion on that purchase. So there is a warning for overpaying. Another issue that can arise is integration. When you purchase an organization, you have to try and integrate it into your company. You have to integrate the systems, the human resources, the culture, etc. And that can be very difficult, particularly if the company that is being acquired has a very different culture and very different processes and doesn't want to give those up. An example I've got here is when eBay purchased Skype. Now, eBay struggled to integrate Skype into its organization because they had very different systems and the culture was completely different and it just didn't work out. Now, fortunately for eBay, it did all work out because they sold it to Microsoft and Microsoft was able to integrate it into its company effectively, and eBay actually made quite a substantial profit. But let's say that Microsoft wasn't there to purchase Skype, it would have resulted in a big loss for eBay. Then on to management ability. What I mean by this is that when a company purchases another, suddenly the managers in charge of that company are in charge of a much larger business in an area that they perhaps don't have the same level of expertise, or they don't have any experience in integrating organizations together and trying to manage two different companies. And sometimes as a result of that, the managers are unable to manage the larger entity. It could also be that there's just a different situation in the acquired company compared to the acquiring company. And the example I want to use here is when Morrisons purchased Safeway. Now, Morrisons had been a successful organization and the managers had been doing really well, managing that company, etc. But the problem here was that Safeway was not doing so well. Safeway was a struggling organization and it had a lot of problems. So when they purchased Safeway and tried to integrate it into Morrisons, the issue that the managers and the directors had at Morrisons was they were not used to managing an organization that had problems, that had failings, that they needed to turn around. They'd only been sailing on smooth seas with Morrisons. They had no idea of how to get a company out of a hole. And as a result, they just didn't have the experience, they didn't have the ability. And it took many, many years before the organization actually became profitable, before they were able to turn it around because they did not have that experience. And that's also linked to change management. And change management issues arise where you have got to try and integrate the different systems, different processes, etc., similar to what we looked at in the integration section. And you need to manage that change management effectively. You need to make sure that the target entity, the company that you are purchasing, accepts all the changes. Another issue happened again with Morrison's, where Safeway felt that the systems that they had in place, the different kinds of accounting systems that they had in place, were far superior to the ones at Morrison's. And they thought, we're not going to integrate the Morrison's accounting system because it is not as good. They should use our system. But of course, if Safeway was now part of the Morrison's group, they had to agree on something, and it caused a lot of conflict. And finally, issues regarding due diligence. And due diligence is where you fully analyze an organization before you purchase it. You don't just think, well, that company is probably a good company to purchase. We can get it for a fair price. Why not do it? Of course, that is not how you would assess a company. You have to assess the potential growth. You have to assess the financial picture of it, because what is published may not always be truly reflective of the position the organization is in. And if you do not conduct effective due diligence, if you do not review the company enough, you do not assess the company's finances enough, it can lead to a poor acquisition. Again, I'm sorry for picking on Morrison's, but I'm using the Morrison's example again. When they took over Safeway, they were unable to conduct effective due diligence. They didn't do it effectively enough. And as a result, when they purchased Safeway, what they thought were going to be the forecasted profits were not the forecasted profits. In fact, they then had to reduce the forecasted profits of the combined group by £200 million because they hadn't realized the poor situation that Safeway was in. So that's a list of the various different things that can go wrong during an acquisition. Yes, there are lots of advantages and benefits to doing it, the reasons why you would want to do it. There's synergy reasons, market growth reasons, entering different markets, etc. But bear in mind that there are some issues that can come with acquisitions. It's not that simple. And as we've discussed in this particular video here, there are quite a few things that can go wrong. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you do have a good idea about those disadvantages and problems of acquisitions now. And if you do want to see more of these videos, we're going to be releasing quite a few relating to different topics, ones that are related to the case study or to the objective tests and general exam technique videos, etc. Then please like and subscribe at the bottom so that you are aware of those when they are released. And also visit the website www.astranti.com for more free samples and also some more information of the types of products that we produce here at Astranti. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.